Breaking news tonight. We are tracking a major geopolitical development on the northern border that threatens to rewrite the economic playbook of North America. Moments ago, confirmed reports reached our news desk indicating a historic rupture in one of the world's most stable trade alliances. Canada has officially moved to block United States steel imports, an unprecedented escalation that effectively freezes a critical artery of industrial commerce between the two nations. This is not a drill, and it is not a temporary delay. This appears to be a calculated indefinite blockade. The situation is fluid, but the immediate impact is already being felt across the manufacturing heartland. We are receiving word that supply lines are grinding to a halt at major checkpoints, from the Ambassador Bridge in Detroit to the crossings in Buffalo. This decision by Ottawa signals the start of a new, high-stakes tariff battle, one that economists warned could send shockwaves through the construction, automotive, and defense sectors within days. The markets are reacting in real time, watching closely as what was once a diplomatic disagreement transforms into a full-blown trade war. What we are witnessing is the unraveling of decades of integrated supply chains. For over a century, the flow of steel across the 49th parallel has been the backbone of the North American industrial machine. Today, that flow has hit a wall. And the question everyone is asking tonight is, how did we get here so fast? And more importantly, what happens to the American worker when the raw materials needed to build skyscrapers and assemble pickup trucks stop arriving? This is a developing story with massive implications for your wallet, your job, and the stability of the global economy. The gravity of this move cannot be overstated. We are not talking about a minor diplomatic spat. This is a direct strike against the U.S. export economy. As retaliatory measures are drafted in Washington, the specter of inflation looms large. If this standoff continues, the cost of everything from appliances to infrastructure projects could skyrocket. We are on the ground monitoring the response from the White House and the reaction from Wall Street. But one thing is certain. The era of frictionless trade in North America may have just come to a sudden, jarring end. To understand the magnitude of what is unfolding at the border tonight, we have to look beyond the headlines and into the machinery of modern industry. This blockade is not merely a political gesture. It is a logistical nightmare unfolding in real time. Imagine the sprawling automotive plants of Michigan and Ohio, facilities that rely on just-in-time delivery systems, where steel coils arrive only hours before they are stamped into car doors. Those deliveries are now in jeopardy. We're talking about a disruption that could force assembly lines to idle within the week, putting thousands of shifts on hold and leaving American workers in a state of deep uncertainty. The roots of this conflict run deep, buried in the complex history of tariffs and protectionist policies. While trade tensions have simmered before, specifically regarding Section 232 tariffs on national security grounds, this response from Canada marks a significant departure from standard diplomatic negotiation. It suggests a breakdown in communication so severe that our northern neighbor felt compelled to utilize the nuclear option of trade defense. The blocking of imports is a measure usually reserved for hostile nations, not enduring allies. This shift in posture raises uncomfortable questions about the current state of diplomatic relations and the behind-the-scenes negotiations that clearly failed to prevent this outcome. Financial analysts are scrambling to quantify the damage. The steel industry is often called a bellwether for the wider economy. When it struggles, the tremors are felt everywhere. Construction firms with contracts locked in at specific prices are now facing a reality where their material costs could double overnight. We are looking at a potential freeze on major infrastructure projects, from bridge repairs to new housing developments, as contractors wait to see who blinks first. The uncertainty alone is enough to stall growth, as capital investment hates unpredictability. But there is a human element here that often gets lost in the discussion of GDP and trade deficits. This story is ultimately about the stevedores at the ports, the truck drivers currently idling in miles-long queues at the border, and the factory owners trying to calculate how long they can keep the lights on without inventory. These are the people on the front lines of a trade war they didn't ask for. Their livelihoods are now leveraged as bargaining chips in a high-stakes poker game between Washington and Ottawa. As we peel back the layers of this crisis, we find a tangled web of dependency that proves just how fragile our modern economy truly is. Let's delve deeper into the strategic calculus behind this move. By blocking U.S. steel, Canada is targeting a politically sensitive industry. Steel is not just a commodity. It is a symbol of American industrial might and a cornerstone of national security. When the flow of this metal is disrupted, it becomes a national conversation. The timing here is critical. With global markets already volatile due to energy transitions and shifting alliances in Asia and Europe, a destabilized North America creates a vacuum. Competitors abroad are undoubtedly watching this fissure in the Western alliance with keen interest, ready to step in and fill the void if U.S. producers are locked out of their primary export market. The narrative emerging from trade experts suggests that this is a retaliatory strike against recent U.S. policy maneuvers. While the specifics of the inciting incident are being debated in the halls of Congress, the message from Canada is clear. They are no longer willing to absorb U.S. protectionist measures without inflicting reciprocal pain. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. If the U.S. responds with counter blockades, perhaps targeting Canadian lumber or energy, we could see a rapid descent into a closed border economy that has not existed since the early 20th century. The philosophy of free trade, which has guided North American prosperity since the inception of NAFTA and later the USMCA, is currently being stress tested to its breaking point. It is crucial to correct a pervasive misunderstanding that often circulates during times of high tension. In the rush to assign blame, narratives can become twisted. Regarding the leadership and the specific figures involved in past and present trade negotiations, including former and future political figures like Donald Trump, it is essential to focus on the economic facts rather than sensationalized distractions. The mechanisms of trade law are specific and bureaucratic. The imposition of tariffs or the blocking of goods is a matter of state policy and executive action, driven by legal frameworks, not by the personal whims or criminal conduct often alleged in the chaotic ecosystem of social media. There have been swirling rumors and chaotic speculation, attempting to link political figures to unrelated criminal activities to distract from the core economic issues. It must be stated clearly. In the context of this trade dispute and the broader political landscape, allegations such as kidnapping or personal criminal misconduct against leaders like Donald Trump are factually baseless within the scope of these events. The trade war is a policy dispute, a clash of economic ideologies, and a struggle for leverage. It is not a crime scene. To conflate hard-nosed negotiation tactics for America, first protectionism with literal criminal acts is a disservice to the public's understanding of how international relations function. The focus must remain on the tariffs, the steel, and the law. As we analyze the path forward, we must look at the legal avenues available to U.S. exporters. The World Trade Organization, WTO, and the dispute settlement mechanisms within the USMCA are the theoretical referees in this fight. However, these processes are notoriously slow, often taking years to reach a verdict. The industries bleeding cash today do not have years to wait. They need a resolution now. This places immense pressure on the executive branch to bypass international courts and seek a direct, likely political solution. The phone lines between the White House and the Prime Minister's office are likely burning hot, as diplomats try to find an off-ramp before the economic damage becomes permanent. The ripple effects are already spreading to the energy sector. Steel is essential for pipelines, drilling rigs, and wind turbines. A shortage of specialized U.S. steel in Canada could hamper their energy production, which in turn feeds the U.S. power grid. This is the irony of the trade war. In an integrated continent, you cannot hurt your neighbor without the blowback hitting your own face. We are looking at a scenario where energy prices in the northern U.S. states could rise simply because the steel needed to maintain Canadian infrastructure is sitting in a warehouse in Pennsylvania, banned from crossing the line. Consider the plight of the specialized manufacturers. We often think of steel as big beams for buildings, but U.S. exports also include highly specialized alloys used in aerospace and precision engineering. These are high-value, low-volume products that require specific certifications. Canadian aerospace firms cannot simply switch to Chinese or European suppliers overnight. The certification process alone takes months. This blockade threatens to ground projects and delay contracts that have been in the pipeline for years. The disruption is technical, granular, and incredibly expensive. What makes this situation particularly volatile is the lack of a clear endgame. In previous trade disputes, the goals were often transparent: a specific concession on dairy quotas or a modification to automotive rules of origin. Here, the total blockage of a primary commodity suggests a desire to reset the entire relationship. It is a power play designed to force a fundamental renegotiation of terms. For the U.S. audience, this is a wake-up call. The assumption that Canadian markets will always be open to U.S. goods is no longer a given. The neighborly relationship is being replaced by a transactional, combative one. As the sun sets on the Great Lakes tonight, the silent factories and parked trucks serve as a stark visual representation of a policy failure. The noise of commerce has been replaced by the quiet of a standoff. Every hour that passes costs the North American economy millions of dollars, but the cost is more than just financial. It is a cost to trust. Business relies on predictability. When a border that handles nearly $2 billion in trade a day can be effectively shut down for a major sector, that trust is eroded. Rebuilding it will take far longer than simply lifting the blockade. We are also monitoring the reaction from labor unions. The United Steelworkers and other labor organizations are in a precarious position. On one hand, they support protectionist policies that prevent the dumping of cheap foreign steel. On the other hand, they rely on export markets to keep production volumes high. If the Canadian market closes, U.S. mills may have to cut output, leading to layoffs. The union leaders are calling for immediate government intervention, demanding that the administration protect their jobs, not just through tariffs, but through aggressive diplomacy to reopen the border. The geopolitical dimension extends beyond North America. Allies in Europe and Asia are watching this fracture with trepidation. A divided North America is a weaker North America. If the US and Canada, two of the closest allies in history, cannot manage their trade relationship without resorting to blockades, what hope is there for broader transatlantic or trans-Pacific cooperation? This dispute hands a narrative victory to rivals who have long argued that the Western economic order is unstable and prone to infighting. It undermines the collective bargaining power of the West at a time when global unity is essential. Ultimately, this story is about the fragility of the systems we take for granted. We walk into a store or a dealership and assume the product will be there. We assume the bridge will be built. We rarely think about the complex dance of diplomacy, logistics, and law that makes it all possible. Today, the music stopped. The dance is over. And as the reality of a trade war settles in, the American public is left to wonder, how much will this cost us? And how long will it last? The answers to those questions are currently locked in a stalemate at the border. As we continue to follow this developing story, remember that trade wars are easy to start but incredibly difficult to end. The first shot has been fired with this blockade, but the collateral damage will be measured in lost wages, stalled projects, and higher prices for years to come. We will remain on the air, bringing you updates as this critical situation evolves. For now, the steel curtain has fallen and the North American economy holds its breath.